Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah.
All right, everybody, it is That EFIN Sports Show, and it is the part of the week that you've been waiting for all week long. It is Adam Hulse Day. Adam Hulse from Adam Hulse Sports, NFL pro writer at sportskeeda.com, among other places. Adam, welcome back. We are going to get into the AFC East today.
I'm loving this Thursday routine here.
This is fantastic. And everybody, it's funny because we keep saying Thursdays because this is when we record it. It actually doesn't come out until Friday, but it is like the Thursday thing. It's Adam Hulse Thursdays that you hear on Friday. So that sounds about right. I think that's actually probably a pretty good title. That could work. You know, Adam Hulse Thursdays.
Thursdays that's heard on Fridays. Yeah, it rolls right off the tongue.
Right off the tongue. Just flows right off of there. One of the things that's still rolling off people's tongues as we get right into it, Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. And obviously this gains more steam with the Derek Carr signing down in New Orleans, which everybody kind of predicted. Everybody saw that. You definitely predicted that last week. So nice call on that. The writing, I think, was kind of on the wall there, and you made a great case about the relationships there. You don't see the same relationships. I understand the Jets need a quarterback. Maybe they're in a good position. I don't know that they're in a good enough position to acquire Aaron Rodgers if Green Bay even decides to let him go.
Yeah, well, the Jets, kind of like I said last week, I think I used this same phrase when we talked about Odell Beckham. It's kind of like a where there's smoke, there's fire type of situation. And there is like a lot of smoke with Rodgers and the Jets right now. Obviously, the Jets first had to get permission from the Packers to even speak with Rodgers because it's, still the tampering period. So they got their permission from the Packers. They flew out to California. They had a one-on-one. Because they flew out there, that obviously means something that was talked about between the Packers and Jets. I can't imagine they would fly out there without at least kind of talking a little bit about what a trade would look like. Because if the Packers tell them this is what we're looking for Rodgers, and the Jets are like, look, we're not even going to come close to that. There's no reason to even bother talking to them. We're like light years apart right now. So there obviously must be somewhat on the same page there. And then another thing to take note of is hours after the plane got back to New York, when the plane landed here, the Jets went right to work. They made a couple of salary cap type moves. For example, they converted some of CJ Uzomah's salary into a bonus, which freed up, I think it was like $6 million or something like that on the salary cap. So something happened in that conversation that told them, let's get to work. That doesn't mean Rodgers is definitely going to New York. It means that they felt good enough about the conversation that it's gone from like some theoretical type of thing to a realistic possibility.
It's just crazy because you have to wonder what the Jets, because look, the Jets have both offensive and defensive rookies of the year. They've got Breece Hall, who, yes, was coming off an injury, but there's not the same amount of worry there as there is with other people. I think everybody is pretty comfortable with Breece Hall coming back strong. So, yeah, they need the quarterback. And obviously, they need support help. I mean, they need some line help. They've got some significant free agents hitting the market. O-line help, a lot of it on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker and safety and stuff. They've got a nice draft pick to help with that with 13. So they're going to get, a really nice player sitting at 13 to help shore up somewhere. I would think offensive line or safety, but I mean, we'll see with that. But what are the Jets? Because I can't imagine that the Jets are going to give up either Sauce or Breece or Wilson. They're trying to get their quarterback to be the leader to bring all these pieces together. So how many draft picks, how many millions of dollars, and what are they actually going to be willing to give up to get Aaron Rodgers? What can they afford to make the deal still work once they make it?
If I'm the Packers, I'm the one trading Rodgers. My starting point is a first round pick. And then from there, it's going to be fillers and support. That's just my opinion, that it has to be at least one first round pick. It's very strange because, you can kind of, maybe the most comparable recent thing was the Russell Wilson deal. Now, Russell Wilson is much younger than Aaron Rodgers is, but recent success, at least in terms of regular season for sure, Aaron Rodgers has 2 MVPs in the last 3 years. Rodgers, the contract is kind of what it comes down to. Right? The $60 million and all that crazy stuff with Aaron Rodgers' contract is what makes this tricky too, because that's the bargaining chip for the Jets is, look, you guys gave him this ridiculous contract and that hurts what you're going to get back for him. Russell Wilson, when he was traded, was kind of a fresh slate that the team could kind of negotiate their own terms with it. So it's a little bit tricky in that sense.
It is. And I hear what you're saying about, hey, we're going to help you with this money situation that you're dealing with Green Bay. Yeah, I think multiple first-round picks. I don't think it's going to be just one. I think it's going to be multiple first-round picks over the next few years.
And it's going to be interesting because the Jets' argument is, hey, look, Rodgers was not the same Rodgers last year. Now, he wasn't bad. He was not worth last year what you paid for him. And it's not our fault that you gave him that contract. And their negotiation is that, look, we're doing you a huge financial favor here, and we're taking the risk of a quarterback who is nearing 40 years old, showed signs last year that he could potentially be on the decline, and he's still the highest paid player in the NFL. That's the Jets' case for not giving up too much. Now, if the Packers accept that, that's a whole other story.
And his mental capacity is in question at this point, too.
Right. You know, I mean, is he going to retire? Are they going to get 1 year out of him? Are they going to get 2 years out of him? Unlike, again, Russell Wilson, where you knew he probably has 5 years or so left in him. Rodgers, you just don't know. This might just be a loan for a year.
And because he doesn't even know. I mean, he's still having his stocks and he hasn't even decided, which I think is kind of messed up, honestly, with the way the league looks right now. I mean, making decisions so teams know what they're going to have to do with the draft coming up. You know, that's kind of like where he likes to be anyway. So we understand that. I think the cost is just going to be too high. I don't see Aaron Rodgers leaving. However, I definitely understand that Green Bay is kind of just done with all of it and probably wouldn't be too sad to see him go.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if I'm a Packers fan, which I'm not, I don't know exactly how I feel, but, like, I think if I was a Packers fan, I would be done with Aaron Rodgers. I'd be like, look, enough is enough. I'm sick of going through this same song and dance every year. I love what you did for us, but like with Brett Favre, the time comes when you just got to move on, and it's better to do it a little bit soon than wait too long.
And it's funny, ironic that it's the Jets on deck again. Aside from the quarterback thing, look, the Jets they did well, and they're set up nicely. They still got plenty of hole because, again, the free agent market, they are getting hit by the free agent market. Their safety coming up, their center is hitting the free agent market. And there's nothing saying that they're not going to be able to retain these guys. George Fant is getting ready to hit the market. There's a lot of people that they need to look at either retaining or replacing offensive tackle. You can't take a quarterback. You can't look at last year's quarterback situation and say, oh, their offensive line is perfect. They're fine. They need help there.
But having Aaron Rodgers is also in turn going to help the offensive line a little bit, as opposed to someone like Zach Wilson. Obviously, the experience, a little bit of mobility back there. Rodgers is going to know how to avoid pressure more so than a rookie would, of course. But I don't disagree. They do need a little bit of help on the offensive line as well. If they do happen to get Rodgers, that's what they can then maybe use that first-round draft pick on, is getting another offensive lineman, shoring that up a little bit.
And that's kind of, the popular train of thought of where the Jets are going to go with this. But again, we don't even know if they're going to have that draft pick if they get Rodgers. So that's another area of concern. They could get Rodgers, but I'm not sure that the cost is going to be worth the reward, especially sitting at that 13th pick. I think you could, there's a chance that someone's still there. There's still free agents out there that you could go after that would cost a lot less. And maybe they've talked to Garoppolo, and Garoppolo has no interest in going to the Jets for what it's going to cost to get Aaron Rodgers. And like you said, this isn't a long-term fix when you get Rodgers. Even if he doesn't retire after a year, he doesn't have a lot of years left before he's just physically going to have to retire, depending on how far down the Favre hole he wants to go and how many teams he wants to bounce around to and shadow the end of his legacy.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago when we did a QB carousel episode and we kind of talked about the whole, quarterback free agent market and teams in need, my pick for the Jets was Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, like the Saints, with the Dennis Allen connection with Derek Carr, there is, of course, that Robert Saleh and Jimmy Garoppolo connection. Right now, because of everything that's happening with Rodgers, in my opinion, Garoppolo would kind of be their fallback option. And they may have already talked to Garoppolo. Him and Saleh do have somewhat of a relationship. They spent years together in San Francisco. But if we are talking about connections here, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is that the Jets did go out and hire Nathaniel Hackett to be their offensive coordinator this year. Hackett, of course, was Rodgers' offensive coordinator in Green Bay for each of his last MVP seasons.
This is very true. I've been saying it about other players throughout the draft and the combine. Players drop hints if you pay attention. Teams drop hints, and if you're looking, that is definitely something right there. You can take the Carr situation down in New Orleans, and it played out exactly like you said, probably for a lot of the reasons you said. There were relationships there, and relationships matter. I kind of have Garoppolo going to the Raiders myself, but we'll talk about that when we get to that division. Let's move on to the next team, the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are interesting because the thing that is so complex about the Dolphins is they have a fantastic quarterback. They've got someone who can be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. The worry is that if someone brushes him, he's going to get another concussion. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's just the way concussions work, and it's the way that Tua is looking right now. And you have to worry about his health coming into this new season.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And, head injuries are obviously a scary thing for the long term, this and that. And, I mean, he literally, this isn't being exaggerative. If he suffers another concussion this year, that could be the end of his career. That could be it, the brain doctors and this and that might tell him, look, you got to just stop playing. It's just too dangerous. And I think that the Dolphins are fully aware of that as well. We talk about, the reading between the lines stuff. Remember, with the whole Deshaun Watson situation when he was traded, the Miami Dolphins were a front runner in that conversation for a very long time before he ended up going to the Browns. And now there's these little rumors out there, too, about the Dolphins having interest in Lamar Jackson. Now, of course, the Dolphins have not verified that themselves. They're all in on Tua, publicly at least. What they're saying behind closed doors, a lot of times there is something behind these rumors. Whether they're big or small is, to be determined. Rumored with Watson, rumored with Lamar Jackson. Are they behind the scenes kind of not so confident in Tua because of the health reasons? Because like you said, when Tua's at his best, which in the beginning of last year when he was among the MVP candidates.
Absolutely. Interesting dynamics you bring up with Lamar Jackson, because if you do get Lamar Jackson, you're essentially putting Tua out. You're saying you are now the second string because you're not going to pay all that money for the talent of Lamar Jackson and then have a QB competition. It's just not going to exist. Lamar Jackson would be the starter and Tua is going to be the backup. And Tua may be happy with that because of his health concerns, but it doesn't seem like he's that kind of guy. It seems like he wants to start. He's doing a lot of things in the offseason, exploring a lot of alternative methods to help protect himself, keep himself ready to play. But I think anybody with any type of medical background, and I just happen to have a little bit one myself, knows that with the head injuries and the way Tua has been going down and how many, the severity of the head injuries he had, his playing days, I'm sorry, they're numbered, and it's a small number. And I hate to see a talent like that end up in a situation like that, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't risk those multiple head injuries many times. He's already kind of right on that borderline. There's a big debate out there. There's a lot of people who don't even think he should play this year.
I'm one of them.
They think he should retire with all the new developments in the CTE and some of the scary stuff you hear about what happens with players later after suffering all that head trauma. It's not even so much the concussions right now. It's 10 years from now and on, what's going to happen to him.
Yeah, it's long-term quality of life. That's 100% a real deal. When he got that first one that knocked him out for all those weeks, I said, that's a career ender. I saw the way his body locked up, and I've seen this enough times. I said, he needs to stop playing. And I knew he wouldn't stop playing at that point. But I am definitely in the camp of, for his own quality of life later on, he needs to step away from the game. He has a lot to contribute to the game. Still, I think there's a lot of different things that he could do for the game, but I don't think playing quarterback for the Miami Dolphins is one that he should continue to pursue. And that could very much hinge and be fuel for the Lamar Jackson conversation. But it's not just quarterback that we need to talk about with the Miami Dolphins, because look, they've got 4 free agent running backs. The entire backfield is up for free agent. Are they going to keep some of them? Are they going to try and get a true bell cow? What do you do when all 4 guys are up for free agency? I imagine you have to keep at least somebody.
I mean, I feel like either Jeff Wilson and or Raheem Mostert, at least one of the two, if not both, I think are probably going to be back. I think what we've learned about Mike McDaniel as both the head head coach of the Dolphins and his time with the San Francisco 49ers is I don't think he believes in splashes, workhorses at running back. I think he believes he can design rushing yards and design the rushing game, and it's more about the scheme than it is about the player, and I think that's the route he's going to go.
I mean, how do you feel about that? I don't completely disagree with that because we've talked about this before on earlier shows that there are exceptions to the rule when you talk about Henry and guys that can carry your team, CMC, things like that. But for the most part, I really think that's what the majority of the NFL is doing is they're kind of plug and play at running back. We can design the scheme. If we build our offensive line to open the holes, then it doesn't really matter who's carrying the ball through it.
Yeah, there is merit to that. Committing money to a running back, there is proven history that, teams that pay their running backs massive salaries don't usually make runs at the Super Bowl, at least not in this modern version of the last 20 years or so of the NFL. And because of the short lifespan of the running back, there's just so many examples of you pay the running back the big contract, whether it be 3 or 4 years, you usually don't get value at it for the whole length. You usually only get a couple. By the time a running back is like 26 years old, a lot of times they're already at a gap.
We could do 3 shows about running backs that their careers were cut short from injury. Other places that they need to go. I mean, obviously they need to shore up the offensive line. Tua is evidence of that. And they need a lot of help at it. Gesicki is a free agent this year. Miami had a good thing together. Now they don't have a first-round pick. They have key pieces, big key pieces that they need to worry about and lose and retain and wonder health-wise. They just have a lot to worry about. I don't know if they can keep enough together. They've got the best wide receiver tandem in the league. I just don't know that they have much else.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's a lot of holes. Apparently, they're losing Byron Jones in the secondary, even though he didn't play much last year. I agree with you on the offensive line. We just said that they don't have a running back. So there's a lot of holes in this Miami team. They kind of, they have, of course, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and some of the star potential, but that supporting cast needs a lot of work. I could see this being a step backwards this year for the Dolphins.
Yeah, McDaniel has a real uphill battle. Another guy who's kind of fighting uphill right now, who you wouldn't think, who hasn't been for a long time, is Bill Belichick. You've got quarterback issues, controversy. I don't know what you want to throw in there. The quarterback situation is not right in New England right now. You don't have a true number one, and I love Jacoby Myers. Don't get me wrong. I love Jacoby Myers. I love what they can do, and that's kind of what Bill Belichick does, is he can make most people look good. If you are a 7 or an 8, he can make you look like a 9 or a 10. I'm still not sure that Jacoby Myers is like the guy. They need some linebacker help. They need some offensive line help. Everybody needs offensive line help and everybody needs defensive line help. I mean, I got it. Again, not as many holes as the Dolphins, but they've still got some work to do.
Yeah, I mean, I personally am not going to be worried about the Patriots defense. Their defense always ends up being solid with Belichick. He always gets the most out of what he has on defense. It's really that offense. Yes. And they're young and they're going to develop and they're going to have a new scheme every week like they always do. And I'm not worried about them defensively. It's the offense that's a major problem. I mean, I agree with you on Jacoby Myers. I think he's more of a high-end wide receiver 2 than he is a wide receiver 1. I think he'd be excellent in a tandem with another guy, but expecting him to, take over a game on his own as a top-end wide receiver 1, I just don't see him as that kind of receiver. Now, they have Ramondre in the backfield. That's kind of their big piece right now. I don't know about you. I'm not a believer in Mac Jones at all. I didn't like him coming out of college. I think he was okay during his rookie year. He was pretty awful last year. I think Bailey Zappi actually played better than Mac Jones last year. I wouldn't believe in the future of Mac Jones. What Belichick is thinking, I don't know. He's surely giving him some tough love, though, that's for sure.
Is what I think happened to Mac Jones. I liked the pick. Not necessarily the player, but I liked the pick. After they lose Brady, they get Mac Jones, and I think Mac Jones is a decent fill-in. There's some of the same tangibles there. This is Bill Belichick. He can build this guy, and I think that he was just too hard on him. I mean, Mac Jones is already trying to fill Brady's shoes. That's not a big, tall enough order in the first place. And then you talk about tough love. I think maybe it was a little too tough. I think maybe they broke this kid. That is the point to what you were saying. I agree with. I think the kid is broken. I don't know that he can be fixed, at least not in New England, without that key component. And it's kind of weird that you don't hear. We've talked about how you don't hear a lot of names going through Washington. You don't hear those same names going through New England, and everybody's kind of looking at the quarterback position. but you don't see a lot of names getting thrown around in there. So it's kind of interesting that you have that issue, but not a solution being thrown around. I mean, you've got the number 14th overall pick, so they've got something to work with. You know, do they go wide receiver? Is there going to be a quarterback there? Are they going to trade up? Are they going defense? You really kind of don't know what they're going to do, and you're not hearing a lot about New England.
Yeah, like it's interesting because you do hear a lot of the rumors that like they're not sold on Mac Jones as their future, but you're 100% right. I haven't heard them connected to any quarterbacks this offseason. Besides that, like, they don't love Mac Jones. They don't love Mac Jones. Like, what's the plan here? I would be a little surprised if Belichick drafts another one in the first round. I just don't see that as his style. I don't think that's the route that Belichick is going to go with it. I think he's either going to give Mac Jones one more year because, look, Belichick knows the value, too, of having a quarterback on that rookie contract, on that small pay scale, so he can, you know, kind of beef up the rest of the roster around him. Because that's kind of more like Belichick's style and what he believes in, philosophy, game script-wise anyway. He probably gives him one more year, sees what he has, and then worry about it next year. And maybe bring in one of the second-level type veteran free agents that are out there, just in case things really go south with Mac Jones this year. He can pivot to, you know, one of those guys.
We've talked about the journeyman quarterbacks and stuff like that. We brought up Jameis Winston, who we both like for Washington. I saw you wrote that in your article. That was kind of cool to see that in there over on sportskita.com. I agree with you. We'll keep Mac Jones for now. We'll see who we can pick up. There's a good chance Sam Darnold might be available. There's guys out there that are definitely going to lose their jobs or not be happy after their teams pick up someone else. And that could be it right there. Bill Belichick's just looking for his next project, something I can work with for another year, and I'll get a quarterback next year or something like that. So I agree with you. That could definitely be the plan. And honestly, it's Bill Belichick, so we're not going to hear anything. It's all going to be speculation until it actually happens, just like every year.
I mean, couldn't you see him, you know, sticking with Mac Jones and signing? I mean, you know, here comes Jameis Winston's name again. A guy like that, a guy like, you know, Gardner Minshew or something like that.
Gardner Minshew is interesting, and I saw that article came out today, I believe, right? Or yesterday? Yesterday the article came out.
It came out last night. Yep.
It was interesting to see his name there because all the talk about Hurts, no one's really talking about Minshew, and it's fantastic take. That's why you go read Adam Hulse at Adam Hulse Sports over at Sportskeeda.
I'm not saying Gardner Minshew is the next superstar quarterback, but he was on my list of some of the most underrated free agents this year that you're hearing literally no buzz about Gardner Minshew and where he could play next year. There's basically nothing suggesting that he's going to get a starting quarterback role next year, but maybe he should. He was in a terrible situation with the Jaguars. He played pretty well when you look at his completion percentage, his touchdowns to interceptions. It was pretty good on that Jaguars team, despite a terrible supporting cast around him in an awful situation in Jacksonville. He's now the backup for the Eagles, and in the couple of games that he's had to come in and fill in, he's looked pretty good as well. So he's in the limited opportunities he's received. He's excelled every time. He's
carrying the full Nick Foles stigma, though, coming out of Philadelphia like that. And I think, you know, as fans outside looking in, not being football pros, that would be something that would worry me. We want to go to Buffalo. Buffalo's a team we haven't talked about. And this is a fun one for me because everybody thinks that Buffalo has it all together. That's what you see. You see that Buffalo has, you know, Buffalo's great. They don't need anything. Buffalo's perfect. They might use a little help at the running game, but Buffalo's awesome. They don't have any needs. They're going to be back playing for another Super Bowl run this year, and that's really not how it is.
It's not. I mean, you know, one of the big losses that they're going to have this offseason, you know, Jordan Poyer, their secondary over the last 4 or 5 years or so has probably been the best in the NFL consistently. They're right towards the top of the league in passing defense just about every single year. It's kind of the unsung hero of the Buffalo Bills. They have that high-flying offense. Of course, they have Josh Allen. They put a ton of points on the board. But it's really, you know, that defense, and in particular, their secondary that's been so good for so long with Poyer, Hyde, and Trey White.
And they're underrated. Like you said, they don't get talked about a lot because of the offense. And then in comes Von Miller, steals the show as far as that. And the secondary is like, hey, you know, one of the best in the NFL, but they're happy with it. You don't hear a lot of complaining either.
Right, yeah. I mean, I do think that they could still use another pass rusher. I think that could kind of, you know, I just said that their defense has been quietly so good for many years now. The one thing that they really could use is that additional pass rusher. And for me, also when I look at the Buffalo Bills, and I feel like this is something that's maybe not being talked about as much, I kind of think they still need another receiver too. Because Gabe Davis, he's so hit or miss, so hot or cold. He's like the definition of the boom or bust player. You know, he has his weeks where he gets you 150 to 200 yards with 3 touchdowns, and then he'll go 6 weeks where he combines for like 40 yards over those 6 weeks. So he's kind of your home run type of guy. To me, he's not truly that consistent number 2 receiver, and I don't really see that in a guy like McKenzie or anything like that either. I think their offense would benefit huge from adding another wide receiver.
Yeah, let's play a game. Gabe Davis or Jacoby Myers?
Jacoby Myers.
Gabe Davis or DJ Chark?
Gabe.
You take Gabe, I'd take Chark. Like you said, there's a lot of those secondary receivers. They move around every offseason. There's always a ton of moves with those guys.
Now, look, I'm not saying they should go out and trade for DeAndre Hopkins or something like that. I'm saying that, you know, another solid, proven guy who can, you know, give you consistent production every week. Like you said, a name like a DJ Chark, someone like that who's going to be cheap that they can add as a reliable piece in their offense.
Yeah, number 27 pick, keep playing too good to get what they want. A lot of people projected him to go running back if he's still there with Robinson. Do you think that they would do that? I mean, at number 27, if Robinson's still there, you talk about the draft mentality, take the best player on the board. I can't imagine for what they need that they would pass up on Robinson. I don't know if Robinson falls that far. It's a possibility because running back is definitely somewhere. They're not bad at running back. Singletary is fine. But when you're trying to make a Super Bowl run, when you're playing as well as you are, you're looking for those pieces that are going to finally get you over the hump. And I think running back is one of those places.
Yeah, I mean, you know, taking Bijan in the first round would definitely be a luxury pick for the Bills. Sure, they could use another running back. I think Singletary has been a little bit underrated. He's been consistently really solid in their offense, and no one ever talked about him. Cook looked okay last year. I do agree with you. They could use more help at running back. I see them more adding another committee piece to their backfield as opposed to looking for a feature back and almost taking like the Kansas City approach where you can have, you know, a handful of running backs that do stuff in your offense, especially with how much the Bills pass the ball. They need running backs who are also good receivers out of the backfield.
If I'm the Bills, and this is, you know, just me, I'm using that pick on a defensive guy, probably a cornerback in the first round that's still there. Someone could fall. I'm looking at defense and thinking, you know, like you said, free agency to try and grab myself another wide receiver piece if I do want to do something to my backfield again, the people that are out there. But I think in the first round, 27th, that far back, knowing the needs of my team, I'm going to help out my defense somewhere at some position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'd be looking at defensive back, and if there's, you know, still an edge rusher who's worth it at that spot. Look, the Bills, they're still, you know, top to bottom on their roster. Clearly one of the best rosters in the NFL. So they don't have like these glaring holes that they need to rebuild. So if I'm the Bills where I'm picking, I do agree defensive back makes sense, pass rusher makes sense, even offensive line always makes sense. I think they need to find, you know, what's the best value for someone who can step in and play right now and contribute to a possible Super Bowl run next year.
Do they need a better tight end?
No, I mean, I like Dawson Knox. I probably like Dawson Knox more than most do. Now, they don't necessarily need a tight end to light it up, but look, he's had a knack for the end zone. He's been great in the red zone, and he has his games too. I mean, look, if we're talking tight end position, there's only, 2 or 3 tight ends in the NFL that are even worth talking about. Yep. You know, it's kind of becoming like the forgotten position. They're being asked to do a lot more blocking, and then, you know, those option stretches on the, you know, those run option type plays as well. The high-flying tight ends, I mean, after Kelsey and Kittle and, you know, maybe Andrews and Waller, if you want to throw them in there, there's really not a lot of value in tight ends. So I think Dawson Knox compared to the rest of the league is just fine.
I agree with you. I mean, I think the tight end position, you do have some of those guys, and it is nice to see the tight end catch the ball every now and again, but that's not what the tight end position was there for. What its existence is there for. Its existence is to help the quarterback, help with the blocking, help with some of the schemes. And then if you can split them out every once in a while, throw the defense off and get a touchdown, that's great. And I agree. I think Dawson Knox does exactly what he's supposed to do. I think he does exactly what he's asked to do. And there's a lot of people saying that Buffalo needs to replace him and get a better tight end, but I think he's perfect with the system. He clearly has a relationship with other members on his team, and I see no need to replace a Dawson Knox. I actually think it's pretty rare to get a tight end of that caliber to do the things that they want him to do, because I think a lot of tight ends do want to be the flashy, the next Gronk, the next Kelsey. And so when you have someone who's willing to do what Dawson Knox does, you keep that guy around.
Kelsey's not going anywhere. Kittle's not going anywhere. Andrews isn't going anywhere. There's been rumors that possibly Darren Waller could move. So, I mean, if the Bills wanted to go crazy and go get Darren Waller, like, sure. But, like, even that, like, is that really, like, a huge, big difference-making type of trade for the Bills? I don't really think so. And then after that, I mean, you know, who are they really going to get that's going to, like, significantly upgrade from Dawson Knox? I just don't see it.
Well, we talk about that in fantasy all the time. If you're going to make a trade, a lot of people put the question out, should I make this trade? Should I make this trade? Well, the number one question you have to ask yourself is, does it make your team better to make that trade? And you're right, a Waller doesn't make your team. It's kind of a push at best, honestly, based off Waller's performance last year. So
right, and kind of in that same thinking, you know, there'll be fans of teams who are like, look, like we need to get rid of X, you know, whether it's a quarterback or like whatever. Okay, that's fine, but the first question then has to be is, for what? You know, like, sure, like you can say, I hate this guy as our quarterback. Okay, fine. But then what's your solution? Because there's only really limited options out there when it comes to those kind of things. So sometimes, you know, your best bet is what you got, even if it's not really the best thing for you.
That's been shown time and time again. We talked about that in an earlier show, that there's 32 teams in the NFL and there's not as many players that pick your position to go around as teams that need them. So we did a little better job of this last week, kind of naming where we thought people would go, but we're going to go back through it. Miami Dolphins. No first round pick, so that one's easy. We know what they're getting. The Jets. What do we think the Jets are going to do with this 13th pick?
I see it as an offensive line type of pick. Like if I had to say right now where I think they go, I think that would probably be the most likely. Or if not offensive line, maybe a pass rusher. But especially if they are looking to, you know, make this significant upgrade at quarterback, one of the things that they're going to have to do is protect him, of course. So offensive line is always going to help do that.
I want to go defense here. I think the defense is actually going to pay off better for him. Get Sauce, so he's not the only guy back there. Really make your defense dominant. I'm an offense wins games, defense wins championships kind of guy. Defense would be where I'd want to go, but I agree with you, especially if they're going after Rodgers. But whoever they're going to go after or get stuck with, they might not get Rodgers, they might not get anybody, and they might have to pick one of the guys they've already got. And that's something that a lot of people aren't talking about. The Jets say that's not going to happen. I don't think either quarterback probably wants that to happen after, you know, the relationships that have been damaged and stuff there. But let's be honest, that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, they could strike out across the board. Then what? Do they go for Baker Mayfield or Carson Wentz? Or, you know, do they really go back to Zach Wilson again? I mean, you know, if they don't get Rodgers and don't get Garoppolo, there's a pretty decent drop-off after that. Now, we agree. We both kind of like the idea of Jameis Winston, but obviously that comes with a lot of risk as well. So if they don't get their guy, they're in a tricky situation because they've already publicly kind of said, like, Zach Wilson's not our quarterback next year.
Yeah.
You know, they're saying we're looking for a solid veteran replacement. If they strike out with that, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to go trade for Ryan Tannehill and try to sell their fan base that he's the guy?
Advantage Green Bay there. If you guys don't put together a deal that we want to get Aaron Rodgers, then what are you guys going to do? You guys, what's your plan if you don't give us what we want for Aaron Rodgers? Because you're right. That's where you see Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew get overpaid for a one-year deal, because there's no other options out there.
That's part of Green Bay's negotiation tactic when they're talking trade with Rodgers. Your options were kind of Rodgers and Carr, right? That's what you kind of apparently sold out for.
Yeah.
You didn't get Carr, so if you don't get Rodgers, what are you guys going to do?
Exactly. Being reported right now as we sit here that the Texans are actually making a push to sign Jimmy Garoppolo. So by next week's show, we may have an answer on that as we get into the other divisions.
Oh, once again, we talk about relationships and connections to the Ryans.
Yes, 100%.
Relationships matter. They really
do. I can definitely see that deal. That was my original pick for Garoppolo, that he would go to Houston because of the head coaching move. I've since switched to the Raiders. Houston's easily my close number 2.
Seems like Garoppolo's like the perfect like fallback option for a lot of teams, right?
Yeah. Yes,
you know,
he's number 2 everywhere.
For a team that doesn't get Rodgers, and they're like, all right, well, if we can't get Rodgers, I guess we'll get Garoppolo. Or maybe for one of these teams that we're expecting to draft a quarterback, you know, high in the first rounds, one of the teams is probably going to strike out and not get the guy that they were looking for. and they may not want to take like that, roll of the dice on a guy like a Hendon Hooker or something like that, and they don't get one of the big three or big four or whoever they're looking at, they might only be looking at two. They might strike out and say, well, I guess we should call Garoppolo.
Every big board for teams that need quarterback, number one, insert name. Number two, Jimmy Garoppolo. Every single one of them. He's definitely the second pick for a lot of teams. It's the teams that have him as the first pick, I think, that are going to win him, and he's definitely going to get paid. He has been in a fantastic position like his entire career. I mean, he plays under Brady, and then beautiful situation to go over to San Francisco, play with Shanahan, who's just a quarterback master. Looks great there. He's on his way out the door, and then the injury happens. No, come on back, Jimmy. Shows out again, and now he's set up to make a lot of money again. Just lucky he's good. Don't get me wrong, he's got talent, but man, he has just fallen in the best spot his entire career.
Yeah, and you know what? In my opinion, he kind of deserves that as well, because what I love about Jimmy Garoppolo, he never complains publicly. He's never an issue off the field. From everything I heard, all of his teammates love him. He's a great teammate. He's a great locker room guy. Despite all the negativity that's kind of been around him, how many times he's been replaced, all the serious injuries that have come along with him, his shortcomings in the postseason. Apparently, he's always positive, always looking forward, and the guys around him love him for that.
For the outward eye, and we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but for the outward guy, from the media perspective, the media is hard on him. They kind of downplay him to just kind of a plug and play guy, ship him off, he's whatever. He puts up numbers, he plays well. He doesn't put up huge numbers. He's not going to win your fantasy league, but he's going to win your team game, and that's what is really important. He's going to win the locker room. I agree with you. He's a fantastic guy. I love the story. And he's one of those guys that you just like to watch and you just kind of root for. To get official, I'm going to go ahead. I was originally with the Jets going to go defense, but I am going to go ahead and offensive line as well, which brings us to the Pats. What do we think the Pats are going to do in the first round?
I mean, receiver for me is definitely an option for the Patriots. If they could get, one of the top receivers, kind of where they're sitting in the draft, it looks like they are going to have an opportunity to get a top receiver with how many quarterbacks are likely to go high.
Yeah, number 14.
Other top players kind of slip a little bit. So for me, my pick would be wide receiver.
Yeah, 14 is a nice spot to get a nice high-profile offensive player. You never know what Belichick's going to do, and so you could see anywhere. You could go linebacker, you could go offensive tackle, you could go safety.
He loves going defense. He
really
loves going defense, whether he needs it or not.
It's really going to be a matter of whose turn it is to make the first pick this year between Belichick and Kraft, and I guess we'll find out who wins at the draft. I can't even call this one, so I'm just going to piggyback off yours. It's a weak move, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that brings us to Buffalo. Buffalo sitting on 27, so they're deep, but it's still the first round. You can still find a winner.
I'm going to go with pass rusher. If one's there, that's worth it, but kind of like I alluded to with Buffalo before, their roster is very good top to bottom. They kind of can go for best available in a position that would help them right away. Hey, I mean, if one of the top receivers that they like slips that late in the first round, which is surely possible, maybe they even go wide receiver.
I mean, you can see it because they are going to be looking for that guy, and first round is where you find those guys, and you're right. Someone could slip. I'm actually going to go offensive line. I'm going a little coloring outside the lines a little bit here. I'm going offensive line so that Allen doesn't have to run so much, and I'm not saying that the line is why he has to run so much, but he's also a fantastic passer if people didn't know. So if you can give him the opportunity to sit back there and not risk his body and not risk the injuries that we see fly through the NFL every year at the quarterback position, I think that's a good thing. So I'm actually going to take Buffalo for the offensive line.
I like it.
There we go, everybody. AFC East in the books. Like a lot of really good talk that branches out, and I think we're going to see that every week. It doesn't matter what division we get into. You can't help but get into the other divisions. I credit Adam Hulse with this entire idea because it was your brainchild to kind of run through these divisions, and that's what you do. That's why you're so great. At Adam Hulse Sports. Go look him up.
It was definitely a fun idea to do it this way, and we kind of plug in other stuff along the way and just kind of see where the conversation takes us, right?
There's two trains of thought at the end of the season. Some people think, okay, I can finally take a break, time to breathe, I can relax. And then there's the rest of us that are like, no, this is when the homework really gets done. This is when you really got to put it down is in the off season, because this is what sets up your regular season. To me, that's how I view the off season. I kind of see you doing the same thing, taking the same approach.
Yeah, I love the off season. There's a couple of dead spots along the way in the off season, but the way it's structured now is like every couple of weeks there's a major event of the off season to kind of look forward to. And you know, right now that big one is next week. I believe it's Wednesday is when the free agency period officially opens. That first couple of days of free agency can be a little bit wild sometimes. And sometimes, you know, who goes where on those first couple of days, that then open up, you know, the trade market and the domino effect. And if you didn't get the guy you thought you would, what's your plan B? I love it.
It's almost like draft 1.0 before you get to the draft, or maybe draft 0.5.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to rank those things, but it's the draft before the draft, because that free agency period, especially that beginning free agent period, that truly does set up your draft. We're making all these predictions about which teams are going to take what, who's going to trade where and stuff like that. But all that is predicated on what is about to happen in free agency. There's ideas. You have to have a plan for everything. There's multiple plans. If A doesn't work, we're going to B, we're going to C. The draft, which is kind of everybody's next big event, is set up by what happens next week.
For sure. Yeah, because draft can kind of, what you get out of free agency, because free agency comes first. So, like, you kind of got to address that first, and then what doesn't get addressed and who you're targeting in the draft can sometimes significantly change depending on what happens in these first couple of days of free agency.
I love it. I'm excited.
Sometimes guys get signed and then other guys end up getting cut and a player becomes available that you weren't expecting to be available. And there's, that aspect as well.
Yeah, that's the other, because we don't know who's actually going to get signed. Some people are set up, contract negotiations going on, and of course there's high profile ones and stuff. But there's a lot of guys that aren't going to get the contract they want, or teams are just going to go somewhere else because they need to save cap money or they need to do something else. You hear about it every time some of this happens. You get people. I found out I was getting traded on Twitter. My neighbor told me I was getting traded. I didn't even know. And you see that happen. So it'll be interesting to see how stuff moves around. It'll be interesting to keep up with. If you want your regular season to go the way you're hoping, you got to pay attention now, and especially starting next week. And that's exactly what guys like the professionals like Adam Hulse do every year, and he's doing it every week. Multiple articles at sportskita.com is where you find the majority of his stuff, but you can find him on Twitter at Adam Hulse Sports. Branch out from there. You've definitely read his stuff and didn't know it, so make the conscious effort to read the stuff on purpose, because it will make your sports life better. It does for me. Adam, thank you once again for coming in and doing this another week. We look forward to next week.
Absolutely. Look forward to doing it again next week. I'm sure we'll have a whole bunch of fresh topics, because that, when we record next week, is going to be a day after that free agency period opens. So we might have a lot to talk about next week.
It's going to be crazy, because we already have on the agenda to talk about a division. All these free agent moves are going to come into play. We're going to have a good time making it all work together. Adam Hulse at Adam Hulse Sports is a pro at doing that. Adam, thanks again for coming out. Everybody, thanks for joining us, for listening. Find us at That EFIN Show, EFIN, That EFIN Show on YouTube and Twitter. You can branch out from there. This is That EFIN Sports Show, and I'm sitting here with one of the best in the biz, Adam Hulse. Thanks for coming on, Adam.
Thanks for having me again. Everybody come back again next week. There's a lot to talk about.
Tons. Everybody have a great week. Pay attention, because it's about to get crazy. We'll see you guys next time.
Can't put me down, I be getting loud. You can have it doubts, not what I'm about. Have your f***ing cloud, it be raining now. I keep making sound, go another round. I'm legend bound, can't stop me now.